Most marriages today form a blended family with a child or children from a previous relationship. Blending can be a challenge, but there is hope. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hello, and welcome to Living a Godly Marriage. My name is Melvin Green, and I am co-hosting with my dear wife, Vancille Green. Blending a family can have many challenges, and we know because we've gone through it. And we have learned how to successfully blend a family. But first, Vancille, tell our viewers about your experience blending a family.
Well, this is my second opportunity, and I say opportunity because that's what it is, an opportunity, to blend a family. My first husband had 4 children when we got married. He had 3 daughters and a son. And one of the daughters, which as young as 11 years old, she was 11 years old, and then he had a 15-year-old, and then he had 2 older children, a girl and a boy. One 28, and the son was 23, 24 years old. And eventually we worked it out so that we all got along really well, good and well. As a matter of fact, I'm still very good friends and close with his oldest daughter. As a matter of fact, she was here just a couple of days ago. So we get along really well. And with the others, but they're not as close by as the oldest daughter. So I do have that experience. And when Mel and I started talking about getting married, I learned that he had 3 daughters. 3 daughters. Well, that's not going to win me any points, right? 3 daughters. An older daughter who was not living in this area at the time, but he had 2 daughters living in the home. And they were 19 and 18 years old. Is that correct?
19 and 16, I believe.
And 16.
Yeah, they were teenagers.
They were teenagers and still living in the home, both of the daughters.
One was a senior in high school and the other was a senior in college.
In college, correct. Mm-hmm. Yes. And so that was different for me. My first marriage, all of the children lived with their parents or were living alone, out on their own. They were grown. Mm-hmm. And so this was a different experience to have the children in the home. And one thing that we had going for us is I had a really good relationship with the grandmother and the grandfather.
That's right.
As a matter of fact, they were instrumental in bringing Mel and myself together, correct?
Right.
And so,
in fact, my former mother-in-law introduced me to Vancille.
And so I had that going for me. She liked me. And would always say positive things about me, which I really appreciated. So that even with that, we did have some difficult times. We had some adjustments we needed to make.
In blending the family. It's like we've said, it can be challenging. However, we did work it through. And that's why we'll be sharing in this show and probably the next show tips on how to successfully blend a family.
That worked for us is different for in each, I think, family is different.
Yes.
Some things are different, but we'll just share again what Mel just said, what worked for us.
Right.
And Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Now, Vancille has talked about her experience. I also had experience with a blended family. Actually, it goes back to my childhood. I guess I was around about 13, 14, and my mother and father had a family meeting one evening, and it was announced that my older brother would be coming to live with us. Now, that was surprising to me because I didn't know I had an older brother, but my father had been married previously And my brother was a result of that marriage. And so he was a teenager in high school, and his mother decided that it would be best for him to live with his father. And so he was coming to live with us. Now, that turned out to be pretty good because he was in high school, and I believe I was in the last year of what was called junior high at that time. And I really liked that because he let me come to his high school parties that he had at the house. But we had a good relationship. We really, really did. And my parents did some things to help, again, successfully blend that family. And so that's what we want to talk about tonight. How do you blend a family? And in fact, we'll start off with what is a blended family. I like showing this picture of a blended family. This is an example. And as you look at this family, I have a question for you. You see two parents and three girls. So I wonder, can you guess who's the mother, who's the daughter of the mother, and who's the daughters of the father? It's really hard to tell. And I don't know the answer to that. But what's great about this picture, notice they're all smiling, and it looks like they've successfully blended as a family. Also notice that a couple of the daughters, they're all close to each other, smiling and touching each other. So again, that's an indication that things are working out pretty good for this blended family. So let's proceed. Let's go further and talk about the blended family. Introduction to the blended family. And I'm going to ask Von Seal to share this.
A blended family is one with two parents where one or both have children from a previous marital relationship. And sometimes it's just another relationship. It's not always a marital relationship. So that adds another element to the situation. And so it is estimated that 1/3 of all children in the United States have lived in a blended family by the age of 18.
Mm-hmm.
So there are many types of blended families. And today we're going to be talking about traditional blended families, where both parents are divorced or have children from a previous relationship. And sometimes it's a relationship where the parents were not married.
Mm-hmm.
But today we're talking about couples who have been, parents who have been
Right.
married.
But blended families could be one of the parents was never married.
Right, or a parent is deceased.
Mm-hmm.
So one parent is divorced with the child and the other adult has never married. Or one or both parents is a widow or widower. In the US, the majority of families have experienced divorce, but 75% of the parties remarry, often forming a blended family. So with so many divorces over the years, the blended family is now the most common family that exists in the US today. It is estimated that 1/3 of all children in the US will live in a blended family by the age of 18. When both spouses have kids from a previous relationship, 70% end in divorce, mainly because parents don't know how to effectively
Blend the family. That's right.
blend the family.
It's challenging to do that.
So we're going to look at some of the blending styles, some parental blending styles.
So as Von Seal has showed, the most common marriage today, because there have been so many divorces, is a blended family. Again, a child or children from either the mother or father's previous relationships. So next time, probably back in 2019 or 2018, if you went to a wedding, it was probably a blended family that was forming. Now, one of the challenges that a couple faces in blending a family is what type of parental style to use, what type of blending style to use. So we'll take a look at that, and we'll look at a few styles and talk about that. All right. I'd like to compare this to a chef. Okay, parents try to cook or blend a family, but they don't really know the ingredients. In other words, if I get married and I'm blending a family, I may not really know the kids, but I will have a style that I would use to try to blend that family. So there are one or more of these bad parenting styles that are used to cook or blend the family. And I like to call them the blender, the microwave, the pressure cooker, or the food processor. Now, what's interesting about this is if you have blended a family, I wonder which style you have used. These are all appliances in the kitchen, and you are the chef. The question is, which style have you used to try to blend this family? So let's look at more detail each of the styles. Okay, the first style is what I call the blender style. That's where you can see the picture on the left here. You have a blender, and all those ingredients inside represents different children. And so it's so easy to have the approach, oh, it's easy to blend this family. I'll just turn on the switch, treat them all the same, and everything will be smooth. In fact, we'll create smoothies. However, I may not know the kids. The kids could be different. They have different needs, different preferences. In other words, I cannot treat them all the same. And so instead of creating smoothies, I actually create what I call roughies because that approach does not work. Now let's look at another style, and that's the microwave style. Have you ever used the microwave? What's unique about that approach? Well, it's hard to know how much time is needed to cook in a microwave. Some ingredients become cooked on the inside, but only warm on the outside and need more time to cook. Children are different, so I have to get to know them. I know when I came into a blended marriage and had the two daughters, one took to me right away. Another, it took a little longer. But the microwave style, it's easy to judge one of those children and say, why don't they accept me as their mother or father? What's going on? Something is wrong with them. And actually what they need is more love and time to cook. You wanted to add?
Yes, I do. One of the mistakes I made in blending with my second set of children, I'll call them my children because that's how I see them. They're mine too. I didn't birth them, but I can't imagine loving them anymore if I had. But in my first marriage, I mentioned before that I got along really well with my first husband's children. I mean, we had a little transition maybe with the two younger ones, but his daughter and his son and I got along very well. As a matter of fact, his oldest daughter, she and I are still really good friends today. And we have a great relationship, not only with just me, but with Mel as well. And so I had that same expectation coming into this marriage that it worked in the first marriage with the children, that it would also work in my second marriage. And they're different children. And so it was more of a challenge for me. And it was a different situation as well. Their mother had passed. So there was some tenderness around that. So I had to be very careful what I said and how I said it. And so it was a little bit of a challenge.
Yes.
To blend with them. Yes.
And so the microwave approach, if I think all I have to do is do the same with each child for the same amount of time and they will blend,
No,
That's
not so.
not going to work.
No.
So let's take a look at another style that's used in addition to the blender and the microwave, and that is the pressure cooker style. Now, if you've ever used a pressure cooker, you know that's a unique instrument. The pressure cooker, first of all, is only to be half filled with food or liquid. So you can't go in and say, oh, I'm just going to love them as much as I can and expect that to work. You have to leave space for the steam to do the cooking. And sometimes in blending a family, there's going to be some steam, and you have to have room for that and know how to handle that. And we're going to give some tips on how to handle that. But all ingredients, if I'm using the pressure cooker style, all the ingredients, all of the kids face a lot of pressure. And as you know, if you ever use a pressure cooker, you have to be very careful in how you use it.
And if I may add, I mentioned that Mel's wife had passed away. So I had to be extra careful what I said and how I said it. And because the mother was deceased.
Yes.
Unlike the first marriage, the mother was still alive. And so that was a different situation. So I had to make an adjustment to that.
Yes.
And one of the mistakes I made, I just thought I could come in and of course they would love me because I'm so lovable. So I just assumed that everything was going to go well because it had in the first marriage after a little while. I mean, we got along really well.
But this situation was a little bit different.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's look at one more style here, another type of parenting style, and that's what I call the food processor style. If you've ever used a food processor, you know what that instrument can do. It can break things down and blend them together. However, all the ingredients are chopped up. They can lose their unique flavor and lose their identity. So some parents try to forcibly change the children. For example, adoption may be an issue. I, as a father, may want them to take on my name, but maybe as teenagers or even younger, they don't want to do that. They want to retain their father's name that they were given. And so that could be part of their uniqueness. That could be part of their identity. So I really can't force it. I can't just chop them up, chop up their history, chop up their past, and think we're going to successfully blend.
And if I could add one thing here, one thing I had going for me is their grandmother, their grandparents really did like me. And they were supporting our relationship and Mel and I getting married. And I, I was very careful not to, that it seemed that I was trying to replace their mother because that wasn't ever going to happen. And that wasn't something that I wanted to try to do anyway.
Right.
But I did want to be a mother figure.
Yes.
To them. And
okay, so let's look at let's look at these styles again. And as we summarize them, these parental blending styles, as discussed, our parents should not use one or more of these bad step parenting styles to successfully cook or blend a family. Why? The blender, you treat everyone the same, just put them in a blender and turn the button on, that's not going to work. The microwave, you expect instant or quick blending, and yet you're dealing with children who will cook at different speeds. The pressure cooker, you try to force things. For example, one of the mistakes that we made, we tried to force, and it was really me, tried to force them to have a picture for the family Christmas card, and they weren't ready for that. So the pressure cooker approach does not work. Neither does the food processor. You don't want to chop up their identity, their past, and try to make them one and the same. Using these styles will cause members to become resentful, frustrated, and even confused. So what style should you use? We'll talk about that in a moment.
Okay, I just want to say one thing that we had to handle is when I first moved in after we got married, Mel had pictures of he and his former wife and all the children all over the house. There were pictures everywhere, which was okay. But there were times that I felt a little uncomfortable about it. And so we had to be very careful in how we removed those pictures from the wall, because I didn't want to come in and change everything around.
Right.
And what we did with the pictures of their mother, we asked them to put those pictures in their bedrooms, not to take them down completely, but to have the pictures in their bedroom.
That's right.
And so, and I knew that was a sensitive issue. And so I had to be very, very careful how we approached that. We both did. And in cases like that, I always let Mel take the lead. And I think the biological parent is the one who should take the lead in situations like that.
Right. So we've looked at the bad parenting styles. So let's take a look at a good parenting style and how that should be used. Okay, so instead of those 4 bad styles, we should use what I call the crock pot style to cook or successfully blend the family. There it is, the crock pot. If you've ever used a crock pot, you put all the ingredients in the pot, you put the lid on and turn the pot on. And with low heat and time, the ingredients will, and I will say individually, slowly soften, cook, and blend at their own pace. So it takes time for that. So if you use the crock pot, it's completely opposite the microwave. A crock pot can sit for hours. So compare that to blending the family. The approach should be, I'm not going to force it. I'm going to use low heat. I realize it's going to take time for these kids to make a transition and for adults to make the transition. And with the right low heat, low expectations, the ingredients will slowly soften, cook, and blend at its own pace. Any comments about that?
Well, I was just going to say, one thing that I had going for me is their mother's parents liked me. Yeah. And I actually got to know them before I actually met the children. And so we were members of the same church. So they knew me and trusted that I would be a good mother, parent figure to their grandchildren. And I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know they were watching me the whole time. So, but they were. I had no idea. And they're the one that they're responsible for getting us together, right?
That's right. That's right.
So it's important to have the grandparents on your side, so to speak.
Right, right. But I wanted to say, we learned that we had to use this crock pot approach. We couldn't force it. We had to realize it was going to take time for the kids to adjust. They were not going to adjust at the same pace. Right. We just had to keep loving them, respecting the fact that they were different and that it would take time for them to adjust. They were also different ages. And so it was a challenge, but by using the crock pot approach, it gave them more flexibility, and it helped us to really look at them as individuals and not just group them together, and to realize we needed to keep low heat on and we needed to love them individually, take time with them individually, not group them together. And I must say, it really, really helped to blend using that crock pot approach. Now, tonight we focused on different approaches, and I would like to ask you, as we looked at those 4 different styles, which approach have you tried to use if you tried to blend the family? And the one I want you to remember is the crock pot approach.
Not the pressure cooker.
Not the pressure cooker, not the blender.
Because as I mentioned, I had certain expectations because in my first marriage, I got along with his children well.
Right.
We had a pretty good relationship. And I love Sherry. Well, I won't say their name. I love them very much. As I said earlier, I can't imagine loving them more if I had birthed them myself. So that was not an issue. I loved them. I also liked them.
But you not only had to transition, they did as well.
Did, yes. And it was more.
But in summarizing what we've covered tonight, just remember that crock pot approach makes all the difference in the world. Mm-hmm. Now, in our next show, we're going to really get into what are some tips that you can use to successfully blend the family. This is really important. There are good resources out there. There are great tips that we can share, and we are going to share, not just from our own experience, but reading these resources. So we look forward to our next show in which we'll talk about tips for blending the family. Any closing remarks there?
Well, one thing that comes to mind right now is patience. That would be the one word. Patience. You need to have lots of patience and not wear your feelings on your sleeves, because I'm very sensitive about some things. And
yes.
And so just be patient, not only with the children, but with yourself as well.
Yes.
Because I wanted I wanted everything to work right away. And as it did in my first marriage. And so I had a certain expectation of how I wanted things to go.
That's right. And sometimes our expectations can really cause resistance from the children.
Right.
Well, as we close out, we want to thank you for tuning in. Again, you can write us at livingagodlymarriage@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you. And remember, our next show will provide tips on how to successfully blend the family. So as we close every show, remember, living a godly marriage is the best marriage. That's so long.
Thank you for joining us.